Hi and welcome back to part 3 of Room Database tutorial, and in this video is all about the Room database itself. Okay, so in the previous video we have done adding the dependencies and then creating the adapter for cycler view in order for the Room database to populate in the UI, and this is all about the room itself, the Room database itself. And we have a three key components in room database. First, we have the database, and then the entity, which can be a model class, and third, we have the data access object. Okay, so I will put the link in the description for you to check it out. So let's get started. So previously we have created a listing model for our adapter. Okay, so this is actually part of the room database, and then we only need two classes to create right now. First, I will create the interface or the data access object in which data operations are created. Let's create a new class, and I will name it our data access object. And this should be an interface. Okay, and in this interface we will declare all of the methods that we need into our database operation, things like insert, update, or delete, or get all the users, get all of the data inside our room database. Okay, and I will create the three basic operations. First, the insert, and then we need to pass in the listing. Second is delete, and also we need to pass in a listing. And then third is update, which can be a little bit tricky because we need to pass in an instance with the same ID first, and if that ID does not exist in our room database, it will not do any effect, I think. Okay, so these are the three basic operations for our room database, and then I will create two more methods in order to have a little bit more advanced operations, things like getting all the data from our database. So listing is our model class, and I'll get all the listings. Okay, and then I will create a method that will retrieve only one listing. Let's say that I want to find a particular room with a certain amount of capacity, and it will return only a single object which is the listing, and I'll name the method find room by capacity. And we need an int which represents the capacity. Okay, so that's it. And then we need to annotate these methods in order for room database to be able to identify what these methods will do. Okay, I will start with the three basic operations. First, in the insert, it's very simple. We need to annotate it with @insert, and then at delete, also do the same thing. And for the update, very simple, right? And then for these two methods, we need to do a query, and I want to select all from. Okay, so I need to go back into our entity. Okay, this is our entity, our model class, and first I need to annotate this class that this is our entity for our room database. @entity, and then we need to create the table name. So listing table. Okay, and I will set this ID as the primary key for our room database, and I will set this to auto-generate to true. Okay, so we need this table name as an identifier in order to access into our data access object. And when we go back into our listing, we can just say query select from and the table name that we created, and I want to retrieve only a single data, which is a single listing object, where capacity, I think, yeah, is like or equals the capacity of the past argument. Okay, that's it for find room by capacity. And then get all listing is very simple. We say query select all from and then the table name. So that's it for our data access object. And then we need to annotate this interface with @ okay, so we're done for our data access object. Okay, now we are done creating the two components, and we only need one left, and that is the database itself. We need to create a class, an abstract class that extends room database, and we need to specify the entities and then the version of our database. Let's create a new class. I'll just say our database, and we need to extend room database, and I will create an abstract class. And in this class we need to create an abstract method that returns our data access object. The return type is our data access object, and then say get data access object. Yeah, I think that's it. And then we need to annotate this again with database and specify the entity with a listing because that's our entity, and then the version name, I'll just set it to 1. Okay, so that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the three major components, which are the database, the entity, and then the data access object. And what I will do right now is sort of more of a personal preference, because I will create a facade for us to communicate into our main activity, okay? Because I don't want to create an instance of our data access object inside my main activity. Okay, so I will create a facade for the database, and this will be a singleton class. Okay, so I have implemented singleton pattern inside our room database facade, and if you want to follow along, you can just copy this. And in this class I will make an instantiation of our room database, because I don't want to do it inside our main activity. Okay, let's create our instance, our database, which is the class that we created earlier. And then I need to create an initialize method that will initialize this our database, because it needs a context, which is from our main activity. And in this method I will instantiate our database, and in order to instantiate our database we need to do a singleton approach, which is room that database builder, and then pass in a context and our database class, and the last one is your database name, which can input anything you want. Okay, so I will name it. And for the sake of this tutorial, I will allow main thread queries, but don't worry, in the next video I will do an implementation of RX Java. Okay, I'm sorry for the background noise. Okay, so you need allow main thread and then build. Okay, so that's it for our database, and I need to create all of the methods, the same methods that we created into our data access object. So I will just copy this, and then I will not annotate, so I will not import. Okay, and I will give these methods all of the body we need, because this is not an interface, right? And in the get all listing, I will create an instance of our data access object, because we only created an instance of our database and object, but I will create an instance, and in the initialize method I will assign that our database access object from our database variable. Yeah, I think I need to go back and make this public. Yeah, I need to make this public, and there we go. We have access to our database access object, and now we can do database operations. And this method returns a list of listings. I can say return that our database access object and get all the listings. Okay, keep in mind that this is a blocking call, and it's using the main thread to do database operations, which is a very bad practice. Okay, so but for the sake of this tutorial I will allow this, but don't worry, in the next video I will do a RX Java implementation of this room database. And in the second method, we need to find a room by capacity and do the same thing again. Okay, in the update method it's kinda tricky. I will need to add a first parameter, or add a parameter, because I need an old index in order to update it inside our adapter. And for now, this old index is not gonna be in use, but I will adjust the adapter later on, and I will do the database operation, passing the new listing. Okay, so that's it for. So let me convert this to local for our room database facade. And now I need to instantiate this facade inside our main activity. Now keep in mind that when calling a facade, we need to initialize it first before doing any operations, because that will result into a null pointer exception. Need to get an instance, and then before doing operations like insert, like that, this will result into a null pointer exception, right? Because we haven't initialized our data access object and our database. First we need to call this initialize, and then pass in the context. Okay, so that's it. And I will do a little bit of change inside our recycler view adapter, because we need to notify the adapter that a data has been changed. And in this bracket, in this method I will create data operations. First is the insert, which is very simple. And in the insert, I will add it into our list, which is our listing list. Add listing, and do the same thing for the rest. Change the method name, which is actually remove. Yeah, remove. I mean set. And in the update method, we need to add a parameter, which is the old index, like what I did in the facade. Okay, so we are done doing changes into our listing list, and this is not enough. We need to notify the adapter that a data has been changed. And for the insert, we only need to do notify item inserted, get the item count, and then minus it to 1, and then notify the data set. The data set has been changed. And then in the delete, we need to say, yeah, notify item range, and we need to pass in a 2 arguments. First is the index, and then the item count, overall item count. And that's it for the delete method. And then in the update method, we only need to call notify item change, which is the position of the old index. Okay, so that's it. That's the change that we need into our adapter. And remember that our adapter is a singleton class, right? Because this is private, and we have a static method that returns an instance of our adapter, which is initialized with this class. And that means that we don't need to create a parameter inside our DB facade in order to pass the same instance. We only need to call our adapter that get instance and then do the insert, right? So that I will do it in the insert, get instance, and then insert listing, and do the same thing for the rest. Okay, so that's it for our database facade. It's completely done, and now we can attach this into our recycler view. Okay, in the next video I will attach all of my layouts, which has overall 3 edit text, and then this is the item that will populate the recycler view. Okay, that's it for room database implementation, and thank you for watching, and see you on the next video.